In a way, what Hindutva says is actually close to Pakistan ideology. Question our own conduct and say that we were wrong to Bangladeshis.
Yes, Uri, Pulwama and Balakot. They caused a sharp escalation in tensions, thereby freezing diplomatic engagement.
Indian Hindutva leader has gone and accepted, Pakistan as an entity. And so I guess that was a very unwise and unfortunate decision of Pakistan's military.
Would you say that 1971 permanently altered Pakistan's strategic thinking towards India?
Muslims were these violent conquerors who came and forcibly converted Hindus.
Is it domestic politics on both sides, or has the conflict naturally entered a more dangerous phase?
Idea and the dream of a friendship is over.
Hello and welcome to another episode. Our guest today is a distinguished voice in global journalism, academia and public policy. He's a writer, policy analyst, a professor, and he also runs his own media house. We have with us Raza Rumi. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Thank you for the generous introduction.
No, sir, you deserve it. Today we are going to discuss the different shades of India, and for a fact, I know that nobody understands India better than you. So my first question from you is that I'll start with Jawaharlal Nehru because he was the longest serving Prime Minister of India. Under Jawaharlal Nehru, India projected a very secular and pluralistic identity. But over the years, many scholars argue that this idea of India has transformed over the years. How do you compare Nehru's vision of India with the India of today under Narendra Modi?
Thank you, Raisa. First of all, India is a very complex country. I do not claim to be understand everything about it, but certainly I am a student of history and a student of politics, and I think it's a very useful comparison because Jawaharlal Nehru was both a founder of modern India and also its first prime minister for many, many years, as you said, longest serving. So he gave India the direction, the kind of vision, and it was a secular vision which is reflected in Indian constitution, which is reflected in many of its laws and even some of its practices. And the larger question that was before the founders and framers of Indian constitution was that how would you run a diverse country like India with so many religions, so many ethnicities, so many groups, languages, how would it function? Because India as a one unit or one country had not really existed in history other than just a few occasions. It was always a group of different nationalities, group of different communities, group of different regional units like, Bengal and south of India and central India and north India and, western parts of India. So they always had been smaller, warring principalities. And it was only in, once or twice in ancient history that India came together, but then again it got divided into communities, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Mughals brought India together, under Aurangzeb, Alamgir. It went all the way up to Deccan.
Okay.
But still, most of the south was not part of the Mughal Empire, the present-day South India. And then the British, of course, expanded and created what is under. So the imagination of a modern, united India is very new. And Nehru was playing a very important role in forging a national identity. Okay. And that's why his ideas of a liberal democracy, of a secular liberal democracy with a socialist redistributive economy were the initial principles that took the early decades of India forward. Okay. Over time, that vision has been dented or challenged. Okay. And now in the last 2 decades or so, more and more critical voices of Nehru's rule and his mistakes and his flawed understanding of India have come into the public discourse. Now, if you remember that one of the books that Pandit Nehru wrote, which was he wrote it in while he was in jail, and that book with the idea of India is that that particular book brought together what he reimagined the past in a way. So all histories are mythological. They are fables agreed upon, as they say.
Yes.
But of course, there are certain factual, records as well, which allow historians to interpret and put together and analyze a particular historical situation. But here, Nehru, in his imagination of India's past, was actually trying to, reconstruct Indian past as from his own socialist, liberal lens, and this book, The Discovery of India, is therefore a very interesting document, and it is a book that I suggest that even all the Pakistanis who are watching this should also read that, because it tells you a different kind of a story than what we understand now. So over time, that particular vision was challenged, and with the rise of Hindutva in 1980s onwards, Nehru's secular or inclusive or whatever you want to call it vision has been seriously challenged and criticized, and his policies have been criticized widely. First of all, it was said that his socialist policies were not good for Indian economy. They kept the growth rate very low. It was called the Hindu growth rate. So they said India could not prosper, become a world power that it deserves to be. Then secondly, he was accused. He's accused of appeasing the Muslim minority,
Yes.
the Muslims of India. So because Hindutva thinks that all other Muslims were these violent conquerors who came and forcibly converted Hindus, right?
Yes.
And did all sorts of bad things to them. So there's that whole narrative as well. Part of it's true. A lot of it's
False.
again false or imagined ideas. Because finding historical evidence is what historians do, and they have been trying to do that and find. So there's a lot of concocted evidence through WhatsApp forwards and what is known as WhatsApp University.
Okay.
So partly the challenge to Nehruvian idea of India is through the WhatsApp University and WhatsApp courses.
Okay, so coming towards the 1971 war and the creation of Bangladesh under Indira Gandhi, it, I guess, marked a decisive shift in the regional power and also in the Pakistan's internal identity crisis. Would you say that 1971 permanently altered Pakistan's strategic thinking towards India, or did it also make India more confident in its role in the region?
So we have jumped to, in a way it makes sense because Nehru passed away in the early 60s and then,
71 happened.
Yeah, and then so 71 was a decisive moment. So, we are talking about the idea of India earlier. And one united, big civilizational idea. So Nehru had that civilizational consciousness where he said that India was a civilization in the past. So the civilization and civilizational consciousness, that's what Nehru was propagating. And of course, Pakistan was viewed as an aberration. In the creation of of Pakistan in 1947, the West Wing, which is today the Pakistan that we know of, that we are familiar with, and then there was the East Pakistan with more people, which is now Bangladesh. So these two parts of that Indian civilization took a different identity, largely based on religious identity, and obviously that was a big setback to this Nehruvian vision of India, this united, secular, all-inclusive, pluralistic, big Indian civilization. And Pakistan obviously had to find its own identity. So it was pitted against a bigger neighbor, a more powerful neighbor. And there was, as you know, a war in 48, there was a war in 65, there was a Kashmir issue. And there was, so Pakistan was desperate to try and forge and form a national identity of its own because it
Okay.
was a very new country,
Yeah.
right? It was a nation state, some time to be built.
Yeah.
And so Pakistan was also reimagining its past. So Nehru was going towards the ancient past and Indian civilization. So Pakistan had to look elsewhere. So it was then looking towards the Turks, the Ottoman Empire. It was looking towards the Central Asian linkages to the Middle East, to the Islamic identity, larger Ummah or whatever Muslim world's identity. So in that process, I guess that is where the larger identity wars, before this physical war of 71 was waged, there was this whole identity crisis that Pakistan was facing. And I guess to this date, it still faces that particular idea because now things have changed a bit, but it has been a question for even today for a lot of Pakistanis. The question is that, what is being a Pakistani, right? So 71 came as a rupture because the Bengalis or the East Pakistanis, as we then knew of East Bengal, we tried to impose our idea of a Pakistani nationhood on them through Urdu language.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So we said Urdu will be a language while they are very proud of Bangla.
Yeah.
Their own language. They're very proud of their culture. They had a more hybrid culture, which had elements of quote unquote what West Pakistani said Hindu tradition.
True.
So women wore a bindi, sari. Now it's changed. Bangladesh is a different story, but then most women were wearing saris and sporting a bindi, right? And they had common poets which they shared with India, like Tagore. Right, so in Pakistan, Tagore was banned early on.
Okay.
So there was a long history, and then there was political exclusion and economic charges of economic exploitation, and then came 71, in which the idea of Pakistan, because you see, we have an idea of India through the discovery of India, through the secular nationalist movement that India went, and there was an idea of Pakistan. So that idea of Pakistan actually was majorly impacted through 1971 conflict.
Okay.
And therefore, Pakistan held India responsible for that and has never forgotten, particularly Pakistan's state or the establishment, whatever you call the civil military bureaucracy, which has ruled Pakistan for most of its life. They have not forgotten that 71, it hangs there as a shadow. And I guess that is something that Pakistan will have to, for its own healing, it will have to process that trauma. Now we are trying to make amends with Bangladesh, but internally we need to
let go of it
and question our own conduct and say that we were wrong to Bangladeshis, right?
Yes.
Apologize to them, apologize to ourselves.
Thank you for saying this.
Yeah, and then we move forward. That's the only way. Otherwise, this traumatic idea. So from 71 onwards, the relationship between India and Pakistan soured further. It all. So before 1965 war, people were traveling. The visa requirements were not there or were very lax. People have all these stories of they would go to Amritsar or they would take a train and go to Delhi or go to other parts of India. And people were still coming from India. Migrants were coming to Pakistan. It's after 65, it was all built as an iron curtain. Yeah.
Okay. So coming forward to late 1990s, when leaders like Atal Bihari Vajpayee attempted peace initiatives like Lahore bus diplomacy right after Pakistan's nuclear tests in Chagi, just to ease out the tensions. Do you see Vajpayee's India and Modi's India as fundamentally different in their approach towards Pakistan?
So I guess I was talking about the rise of Hindutva, and prior to that, we have talked about 65 briefly, 71,
Yes.
the rupture, the brewing hostilities. So it was very interesting. The Vajpayee moment in India-Pakistan relations is a very unique moment
Okay.
because Vajpayee was the adherent of the Hindutva ideology that actually frames the Muslim as the enemy or as suspicious, as an outsider who came and polluted India, who forcibly converted Hindus and is an enemy of the Hindu dharma and Hindu past and civilization. Because you see, the Hindutva idea of India is a Hindu civilization as
True.
opposed to Nehru's idea of India, which is a
Pluralistic.
Indian
Okay.
pluralistic civilization with all different communities and religions and faiths coming into India so India is viewed as a river, as a sea, as an ocean
Okay.
of all these ideas mingling and going forward, flowing.
Okay.
Where Hindutva is more narrow, right?
Yes.
And so, but Vajpayee saw the advantage that in a way what Hindutva says is actually close to Pakistan ideology. Hindutva says that India is for Hindus. We say Pakistan is for Muslims, right? Majority is Muslims. Abhi, children in our, if you ask, any kid who's studying textbooks, they will say that one of the attributes of being a Pakistani is being a Muslim,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So, Alhamdulillah, we are Muslims
Yes.
and we are Pakistanis, right? So, Hindutva is a mirror image. They say, Alhamdulillah, we are Hindu and
Yes.
we are Indian, right?
Yeah.
We are Indian and so we are Hindu, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. They wouldn't say Alhamdulillah. That's they would say Bhagwan or whatever. Ishwar. They would thank Ishwar, the Lord, and so the idea is that that Vajpayee was very accurate in his understanding that, okay, 47 has happened, Pakistan is a reality. So he went to Minar-e-Pakistan, which is a monument dedicated to Pakistan, and said, we accept Pakistan as a country. We are not going to oppose it or fight it anymore. And then let's now find ways of securing peace. So at that time, we had the Prime Minister here who was also very keen to forge ties with India for economic reasons, Nawaz Sharif, who seized the opportunity and signed what is known as Lahore Declaration, which was a
Yes.
milestone.
Okay.
And sadly, that Lahore Declaration was not acceptable to Pakistan's powerful military and elements of bureaucracy, civil bureaucracy, and they then actively sabotaged that. So when this was signed, I think in somewhere in February of 1999, and by summer of 1999, the army had started moving irregulars and its regular soldiers, and Kargil war happened, the third
Yes.
war.
Right after.
Right after
Yeah.
this declaration. So imagine that, the Prime Minister of the country has signed a peace deal, has started a bus service, has relaxed visa,
True.
trade ties. The Indian Hindutva leader has gone and accepted, Pakistan as an entity. And so I guess that was a very unwise and unfortunate decision of Pakistan's military high command, because they were not keen. And the irony is that the general who was ruling there, who was at the helm, General Pervez Musharraf, later on when he did the coup in 99, became the president, he started the same thing again because he realized, so you see the imperatives of governance are such that you need peace in the region. You need trade, you need economic development. And once you're in power, you understand that. So Musharraf was sabotaging Nawaz Sharif, and they ousted him by October 99. He was out of power in jail. And then Musharraf took over, and within 1 or 2 years of his rule, by 2002 or something, he was speaking the same peace language. So for the next 5 years, Musharraf was working behind the scenes to forge a deal with Vajpayee first, then Manmohan Singh, who succeeded in India, and a deal on Kashmir issue, which is still the key issue between India and Pakistan. Now, of course, terrorism has been added because some other tragic developments like the Mumbai attacks of 2008. Also, after 71, I think Mumbai was another turning point, which has really, really impacted India-Pakistan relationship. So Musharraf was trying very hard, but guess what? Musharraf came very close to making a deal with Manmohan Singh. And guess what? Within Pakistan, a movement started against Musharraf by the lawyers and judges
Yes.
in this country. And now we know that the ISI chief, General Kiani, was backing that movement to get rid of Musharraf. And one of the reasons they were ousting him was his effort to make peace with India. How ironical. The same Musharraf who did that to his boss, the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, faced the same resistance by his subordinate, General Kiani, who was the DG of ISI, and Pervez Musharraf was the president and the army chief, but I guess the institution did not want that. So Musharraf was ousted, and then you had a new era in which, and right after his ouster, Mumbai happened. After all the talk of peace, a deal on Kashmir, 4-point formula, and whatnot. So Musharraf, the movement started in 2007. In 2008, a new government came in, by the PPP government came in after Benazir Bhutto's death, murder. And in August, Musharraf was out. And in November, Mumbai attacks happened. Quick succession.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Gen Zs in today's age in Pakistan do not know this side of Pakistan, or this perspective about the peace initiatives with India. So the big onus lies with us, I guess.
Yes, big onus, and it is not your fault because history is history is mutilated as a subject in schools and colleges. Very selective.
True.
Historical facts
true.
are presented,
Yes.
and more are ideas or ideology is packaged as facts or as historical truth. So that's one problem. The second problem is that the other source of information, other than school textbooks and education system, are the media. You know, the television, the
So
newspaper.
we'll come to the media later, but first of all, I want to ask you about the incidents like Uri, Pulwama, and Balakot. They caused a sharp escalation in tensions, thereby freezing diplomatic engagement. Why has sustained dialogue become almost impossible since 2016? Is it domestic politics on both sides, or has the conflict naturally entered a more dangerous phase?
So I think, of course, first of all, yes, the conflict between India and Pakistan is very dangerous and very abnormal because there is no communication at the formal level, right?
Yes.
Like we don't have ambassadors posted in our, high commissioners, as we call them, in our countries. How can you have a normal relationship in this day and age without diplomatic, at least, some formal semblance of a communication? But Uri, Pulwama, they are continuation of the Mumbai,
Okay.
in a way, attacks. And part of it is, there's a playbook. There's a playbook that a small group of violent extremists in collusion with people within India. Either they are the Kashmiri separatists or Kashmiri groups over there because they have resentment against India. Now under Modi, Kashmir's special status has been taken away. Since 2019, it has been integrated into India.
Yes.
So there are some genuine grievances as well, but then Pakistan also stokes them because Pakistan claims that India does the same in Balochistan, right? In the Baloch separatists, Pakistan government claims are funded by India, right? So there's this tit for tat going on as well, which is very unfortunate,
Okay.
which they can overcome. It is not civilized conduct for both the countries to do that or even accuse each other of that. But anyway, the playbook is like, so some violent attack happens now, on Indian soldiers or civilians. Sometimes it's a big one, sometimes it's a smaller one, and sometimes there may or may not be involvement of Pakistani government or state officials. Sometimes Pakistani government says that, these groups we haven't, like Pahalgam, the most recent one.
Yes.
India has not brought any evidence that there was support coming from Pakistani government Pakistan's ISI or Pakistan's some ministry or intelligence agencies or the army or the police or the border security apparatus. No, it hasn't really come through. So oftentimes these are autonomous groups acting from here and there, and because they have common cause like jihad in Kashmir or independence of Kashmir. So they go and do and commit this violence. Now, what happens is that the bilateral relationship then comes into huge under pressure because India says you, Pakistan, have sponsored terrorism on our territory. Now we are not talking to you. We are going to get you sanctioned. We are going to isolate you. Pakistan says, okay, now we are not going to talk to you and we are going to pass resolutions against you. We are going to highlight the Kashmir issue and we are going to support the Kashmiris and other separatists of Sikhs, the Khalistan. There's a Khalistan movement as well, which is now low grade, but Pakistan earlier on has been supporting it and even now supports it. It's a lot of its leaders are based abroad in the West. Canada, UK, and some in US as well. So there's this constant tension going on, and I think that is where Pakistan must admit and Pakistan must take stock of these groups. Why do they exist here? If small groups, if Pakistan government says that we haven't sponsored them, why are they allowed to use violence as a means? Okay, there's political advocacy, there's fundraising. You can do all of that. You can write articles for them. You can hold demonstrations. You can go to the border and demonstrate for your Kashmiri brothers and sisters, but to take arms, Kalashnikovs, and cause violence should be unacceptable.
True.
Frankly speaking. Even though there's a whole school of thought which says that Kashmir's resistance is a legitimate resistance and supporting them with arms and others is a just cause. I don't personally subscribe to that.
Okay.
Because I think that this will never solve the issue. First of all, it causes so much grief and panic and problems for the Kashmiri people, especially those in India, in the Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir. Now it's part of Indian Union territory, and it then causes the bilateral relationship to break. It takes away all chances of peace and collaboration on important issues like climate change. Climate change is the biggest threat that India and Pakistan face, much more than the small groups of jihadis or whatever. But we cannot have any talk of that. Water. Now, water has been weaponized. Common sharing of waters is a big issue because there is a water stress is a reality on both sides of the border. Smog between India and Punjab, Pakistani Punjab, we in Lahore face it all the time. Every year. And in India and Indian Punjab and Delhi, etc. So there are common life and death issues,
True.
Right, which have to be addressed. But sadly, it doesn't happen.
Okay. So you have often been a part of liberal camp that advocated dialogue and engagement with India. Given the current wave of nationalism, like you talked about Hindutva, and mutual distrust, have your own views on engaging with India changed over time?
I guess they have. I mean, I have been a very vociferous and passionate advocate for peace between India and Pakistan, And I've done it at all fora in my writings throughout. My first book was on Delhi.
Yes.
Right? Delhi by heart. How much would I was criticized in Pakistan. I suffered because of it. Because in Pakistan, they said, oh, you are not a loyal or patriotic Pakistani, that you say Delhi by heart. Although it is a word play. It means that you remember it by heart, the streets and Naksha of Delhi or whatever. And still, I was part of track 2 conversations. I've met a lot of counterparts in India, in other venues. And I still want peace. So my position has not changed. I think peace, dialogue, diplomacy is the only way forward. But it has become increasingly difficult. So the change that has disappointed me a lot has come with how the mainstream India has turned really, really belligerent and hateful towards Pakistan, and not just Pakistan as a state. I mean, that is okay. People have issues with states and governments which they have problems with, but with people. Because it was not the case earlier, because there were these bonds between a lot of our friends. I have still many friends across the border, and, they have many friends, Indian writers, journalists, etc. They have friends here across the border, but the kind of dehumanization that we see, that every time there is a terrorist attack, and there are calls for killing bombing Pakistan. So when the Pahalgam happened and Operation Sindoor happened, and kind of TV debates you were reading or listening to, they were like, why can't we just bomb Pakistan like Gaza?
True.
Why can't we just throw bombs and flatten it and get rid of this problem? Now, okay, I understand that sensible people were not saying that, but they are part of the same ecosystem. They work for the same media outlets or same magazines, and their colleagues are saying that, and they're sitting there, or even on Twitter or social media, they don't challenge them. And now the irony is, I am banned. My YouTube channel, my Twitter and my Insta accounts are banned in India since last year. And I've been, imagine, I'm a so-called friend of India. And Raisa, it's a very sad situation. And I have obviously changed my view, because I feel that, India cannot treat Pakistan like an insignificant country, because Pakistan is world's fifth largest country population-wise. It's a nuclear state, and thank God that is why India has not been able to, because the kind of government and the kind of calls to eliminate Pakistan are there. If Pakistan did not have nuclear weapons, I don't know what the current Indian government would have done, But that's a separate story. Still, war is not the solution. I guess that, there's also this whole narrative about Pakistan that is propagated in the mainstream India. I'm sure you have also seen that they call Pakistan Bhikari.
True.
They say कि ये तो हर वक्त भीख मांगते हैं, फकीर हैं. अच्छा, obviously we have economic problems compared to India, but if you look at half of India is actually poor, which is like 500 million people in the world. They are living in poverty. And these are not my facts. These are facts shown by World Bank and other international agencies. Even Indian economists often write about this. So I don't know about the economic progress that they really flaunt. Yes, there are many billionaires in India. Yes, they have a bigger reserve foreign exchange. They have much bigger exports. And yes, their overall trajectory is way ahead of Pakistan. We cannot ignore all of these realities and facts. But at the same time, what they make out Pakistan to be, that is the demonization, dehumanization, and degradation of Pakistanis people, which I really, really take issue with now.
Okay.
And I think that is why I've become very circumspect and very skeptical that I'm not really sure that, we can achieve it. As long as we don't have a war, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see the idea and the dream of a friendship is over.
Okay. So just quick last two questions that you talked about the role of media, and we know that after the 2025 war, especially in the 2025 war, the journalism become a participant rather than being an observer. So do you think media is responsible on both sides, or is it just in India?
The media is responsible on both sides. Let's not, I'm not going to do just a selective name calling. But there are, key differences. First, the size and quantum of Indian media universe is huge compared to Pakistan.
Yes.
Okay, so media, there are hundreds and hundreds of TV channels in local, national, and English languages in India. There are hundreds of newspapers with huge circulation, and then you can see online media. You open YouTube, you go to Instagram, you go to Twitter. Indians are everywhere. Across the globe, you will see them, because their size is the world's most populous country now. Number one, 1.3 or 1.4 billion people.
Yes.
So first is the size.
Okay.
Second is the ideological bent of Indian media, that when it comes to foreign policy and national security, and this I learned rather late in life, because in Pakistan, being in English press, you always felt that you had this right, and we exercised it as well, to criticize the Pakistani military and Pakistan's military adventures and their foreign policy and security policy, etc., etc. And I've consistently written about it, challenging Pakistan's national
Yes.
security framework. In India, it's not the case. In India, there's a lot of freedom to talk about domestic issues. But when it comes to Pakistan policy, there's very few voices that challenge the government in power. When it comes to the national security, larger issues, even the liberals fall in line. So even on Kashmir issue, for example, when India under Modi, revoked Article 370 and others, and other instruments, the Indian liberals were okay. They were kind of celebrating. Nobody really talked about, the fact that it's an unfinished business of partition, that let's ask the Kashmiri people, maybe, there's a democracy in India, and the way those laws were passed and the way those legal amendments were done in like half an hour, which is in words that they say we are the largest democracy in the world, and look at the conduct. And liberals did not say much because it's national security, nationalism, right?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. In Pakistan today, there's a lot of censorship, a lot of control, but still in English media, and even in some sections of vernacular media, you find people criticizing. Now, Pakistan is has started a war with Afghanistan. You see so many views which are against that war. If it was India, there would be blanket support. Yes, go and crush them.
Yeah.
So there are many columnists, many TV anchors who are saying this is wrong, right? Or expulsion of Afghan refugees, or the way Pakistan maybe is dealing with even Trump. Right? A lot of people are celebrating. Some are saying, no, don't be a poodle to the American empire, blah, blah. You read all these articles. I mean, I publish them in the Friday Times all the time. They're critical articles of Pakistan's current policy. So that's a difference, right? This blanket blind following of state ideology, of government ideology, political ideology, and the political ideology of whereas Modi has done good things, I'm sure that's why he gets votes. In terms of economic development, in terms of infrastructure, special schemes. He has done lots of things, and I'm sure his supporters will tell in the comments where he succeeded. But Modi ji has also flattened or given really, really awful ideas, in terms of, or he has not said it himself, but he encourages, the idea of Muslims as the enemy, attacking the Muslims.
They're building a narrative, basically.
Yes. So I guess that is something which sadly is going to threaten India-Pakistan peace.
Okay. So just a last question, that historically, even after wars and crises, there were moments of reset, like Tashkent, Shimla, Lahore Declaration, as you also mentioned. What do you think is the future now? Because we see that the policies are much more hardlined now.
What is the future? I think the future, there are two scenarios. One is that there is some internal recalibration within India. In Pakistan, there is. In Pakistan, there is still a peace constituency. Even people will be surprised, even among the generals, But in India, that constituency has evaporated. People within the government, within the civil society, within the media, within the political parties, that has shrunk, really, really shrunk, people who want peace or engagement with Pakistan. So maybe there's some recalibration, there's some movement. Secondly, if BJP government, if BJP loses power, then, and there's a new political configuration in power, maybe they will start afresh. But that is not happening anytime soon because BJP is really powerful and really strong in India. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. I think we'll wrap it up here, but thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you, Raisa. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Okay.